With the rise of Season 11, Riot has completely blown up and overhauled the item shop for a completely new interface and very intuitive experience. Everything suddenly now deals more damage, mages do all sorts of crazy things, assassins have so many tools to work with, and tanks are suddenly unkillable. But one jungler has risen above the rest, surprising almost everyone, stomping even the highest levels of solo queue with a 60% win rate. This is why Amumu is now League's best jungler in Season 11. Before I start off, I'd like to quickly point out that if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Literally only 4% of my viewers are subscribed, so let's try to get that number up together. Thanks. It's been many years since we've seen Amumu show any signs of viability at higher elo or any professional levels of play, and with good reason. He's been notorious for an extremely slow and weak early game and allows himself to get punished so easily by early game juggernauts like Elise or Lee Sin. That, or he's been outpaced by other junglers that can do his job but better, such as Karthus or Lilia, champions that have brought very high-paced jungling with equal or even stronger team-fighting potential. Because of this, he's been able to bring very little to the higher ranks and in competitive play. But there are a few key things that have changed with League's major Season 11 update that have pulled Amumu into the spotlight. Some of it can be attributed to the changes of the jungle camps, but a lot of it has to do with the item changes. With this new season, Amumu has received quite a few items that have helped him itemize a ton against most situations now. In addition, Riot has removed the completed version of jungle items, meaning that many junglers that were reliant on having 2 or 3 of their core items to come online are now able to get to that point much faster. In addition to getting a benefit from this, Amumu is able to make use of one of the strongest items in the game right now, being Sunfire Aegis. In the midst of all the OP looking assassin and mage items now in the game, Sunfire Aegis has gone relatively unnoticed. However, in exact contrast to what everyone initially thought, Sunfire Aegis is actually one of the most broken items to make it through Season 11. Most players might be familiar with older versions of Sunfire Cape that simply provided area of effect damage everywhere. Sunfire Aegis still has this effect, but not only have they buffed its damage to scale with your max HP, it also has a scaling damage effect as you deal more damage in a skirmish, similar to something like Conqueror, increasing by up to a massive 72% more from its original damage. In addition, once you hit max stacks and access this additional damage, your auto attacks as a tank now will explode around you and actually deal the original Sunfire Cape damage as a burn for 3 seconds. All of this essentially translates into tanks now being able to simply tank through any of the damage that we're seeing in the game right now and melt through all of the squishy champions that they are facing because these champs just don't have Sunfire Cape. By the way, Sunfire Aegis now provides HP, armor, and MR, and CDR, which are stats that almost every tank in the game love to have. In line with what most mythics are allowing players to do these days, you can now brain dead rush Sunfire Aegis without any problems. Compare this to the old S11 Amumu build, which had some varying success depending on which build you wanted to go for. Tank Cinderhulk Amumu tended to bring very little to the game compared to other tanks due to how little damage he did without damage items, so typically many junglers would actually rush Runic Echoes instead. Some players would take this even further and go straight up AP on Amumu, allowing them to straight up one-shot people in certain scenarios, but at the cost of his durability, meaning that instead of being a tank, Amumu was basically a straight assassin in fights. However, Sunfire Aegis is such a well-rounded item for Amumu, it essentially provides the durability that Amumu needs for fights while still providing enough damage for him to be a disgusting menace. In practical scenarios, this means that you will be tanky from a very early point in the game and will actually be stronger the more tank stats you build. Clearly, Sunfire Aegis is a broken item on its own as people are building the item on champions like Fiora or Riven, and this was definitely not the intention of the item. However, when you put the item on a champion like Amumu, it just fixes all of his problems with a single item. Once he gets this item, Amumu will be able to tank through basically any champion in the game while being able to match or even exceed their damage in certain situations. With the damage stacking effect and the ability to tank most things in the game and the much needed CDR for his kit helping him get more rotations of his E, Amumu is able to spike with just that one item. The tankiness also allows him to solo Baron at basically any point in the game now because of his W Despair. This ability is the only one in the game to have percent damage that is uncapped on jungle monsters, meaning that as long as he can survive, he will be guaranteed to kill it. For better assurance, it might be better to kill the Baron with one of your teammates to make it a lot faster, but it's still pretty easy to do this by yourself. In addition, Sunfire Aegis' damage is increased because of Amumu's passive Cursed Touch. Any champion that Amumu autos in a skirmish additionally receives 10% of all magic damage again as true damage, and this includes damage that comes from the Sunfire Aegis. This further emphasizes the sheer amount of power Amumu gets from this one item. If he manages to bandage toss into the backline in fights and get an auto attack off on the AD carry, it means that he will basically get his full combo off and get a massive amount of damage off from the immolate burn. The idea that Amumu, as a tank, can one-shot the enemy backline if he wanted to is the personification of Season 11 in a nutshell. Complete bullshit. Although Amumu has claimed the throne of being the jungle king in the current preseason, he isn't without his weaknesses. Even though he will spike rather quickly once he grabs Sunfire, he is still extremely weak in the early game. Most players won't be as adjusted to the champion just because the strongest junglers in the game for the past few years have been ones with generally strong early game presence such as Hecarim, Olaf, Elise, and Rek'Sai, and Amumu is probably one of the weakest early game junglers in the game right now. If you are able to run him over and deprive him of resources, Amumu can still be countered and will struggle to get going. He has a slow early clear speed, has low gank presence, and low skirmish capability for at least the first 5 to 10 minutes in the game. If you have Amumu as the enemy jungler in your games, this means that this is your window to try and punish the Amumu as much as you can. As the enemy jungler, it is your job in this manner to deny the Amumu camps, invade, and try to kill him so that he isn't able to scale up and do anything. This can be done with early game kingdom champions like Elise or Kha'Zix, or even Hecarim, or you could even try to deny him and have a stronger impact with other tanks like Nunu or Sejuani. Honestly though, the champion is 60% win rate for a reason, and even by trying to punish him in the early game, it's still pretty easy for Amumu to survive long enough to get his Sunfire, and as long as he has lanes that can protect him in the early game, he becomes an easy win condition for any game in solo queue, and especially in team play. If you can help it, it's much easier and less stressful for you to just ban it or you just play it yourself. Here's some quick information on what you should be running on Amumu. For runes, I'd recommend taking Conqueror these days for its high skirmish potential with Domination secondary in order to access Ravenous Hunter, which is still a broken rune for giving him insane sustain. You max E, Q, and W in that order. In terms of jungle pathing, you want to path such that you are able to survive as much as you can, meaning that you want to path towards your winning matchups so that you have any chance of fighting for a crab at 315. Even though Amumu is strong, he needs a lot of hand-holding in order to ramp up, so don't be afraid to call your teammates over for help. Amumu also typically just wants to full clear his own jungle in the early game and not do anything crazy like invade. Ganks are still going to be a good option in the early game if there are good openings, but unless you are playing around your hard winning matchup, you need to consider the 2v2 skirmish with both junglers and laners involved. Most of the time, Amumu probably won't win these skirmishes, especially at level 3, so you're not going to be as proactive as you normally would on an early game jungler. If you can get away with it, start on your red side jungle as Amumu because he shreds the AoE camps with ease. With very little presence dating as far back as Season 2, Amumu has finally made a return to the meta, but not as a setup champion we remember him for back in the day. He's a bona fide time bomb now and is looking to dominate the meta with Season 11 with his insane amount of damage, tank, and crowd control. Alright, hey guys, if you've made it to the end, thanks for watching. This is definitely not the Valorant content that most of you may be used to from me, but I wanted to try out making some League content as well as I've been having quite the itch for it. Let me know what you guys think about it, and if there's anything you want covered about League in any way, please leave a comment. If you would rather still see more Valorant content instead, also feel free to leave your thoughts down below. Either way, I appreciate you guys sticking to the end, and stay fresh, brothers.